Commentary couldn't even hear themselves talk. The roar was that loud. As she stepped through the fog and the fire exploded behind her, the arena hit noise levels never heard before. She's back, and the WWE Universe absolutely lost it. But before that wall of sound hit, there was a moment that felt like it lasted a lifetime. It is the strangest phenomenon in professional wrestling, the split second between the lights going out and the first note of music hitting. In that darkness, 20,000 people hold their breath at the exact same time. It creates a vacuum in the room, a heavy, suffocating silence that feels electric. On this night, the air was thick. The main event had just ended in chaos. Bodies were strewn across the canvas. The villains stood tall, laughing at the wreckage they had caused. The crowd was angry, desperate for a savior, yet resigning themselves to defeat. You could feel the disappointment radiating from the rafters. The minimalist animation shows the villains raising their arms in triumph, the crowd slumping. Then, the arena went pitch black. Not a gradual dimming, but an instant, violent void. The laughter in the ring stopped. The booing stopped. For 3 seconds, there was nothing but the hum of the air conditioning and the collective heartbeat of 20,000 souls. This is the canvas upon which history is painted. In this darkness, hope is not just a concept. It is a physical sensation. Everyone knew something was coming, but nobody dared to believe it was her. It was the kind of suspense that tightens your chest, the calm before a tsunami that was about to wash away everything that had happened in the last 3 hours. When the first chord struck, it didn't sound like music. It sounded like an explosion. It wasn't just a cheer, it was a physical force. The floor of the arena actually shook. If you were standing backstage, you would have seen the water and plastic bottles vibrating on the tables. The silhouette stepped through the thick rolling fog, and the pyrotechnics detonated pillars of fire shooting toward the ceiling. But the fire was silent compared to the human noise. The commentary team, usually so composed, was rendered obsolete. You can see their animated mouths moving, shouting into their headsets, but no audio is coming out. They are drowned out by a primal, guttural roar of recognition. It wasn't just happiness. It was relief. It was the sound of a family welcoming home, a lost daughter. As she walked down the ramp, the camera shook violently, not because of a cinematic effect, but because the cameraman couldn't keep his footing against the vibrations of the crowd. She walked with a slow, deliberate cadence. She didn't run. She didn't smile. She just absorbed the energy. Every step she took seemed to increase the volume. In the ring, the villains who, just moments ago, looked invincible, now looked like terrified children. The shift in power was instantaneous. She didn't even have to throw a punch. The noise did the work for her. It was a wall of sound that pushed against the ropes, trapping the occupants of the ring. This wasn't just a wrestler returning to a job. It was a monarch reclaiming a throne that had gathered dust in her absence. The sheer volume broke the audio sensors on the broadcast feed, causing a static distortion that millions watching at home would remember forever. While the arena was dissolving into euphoria, the world behind the curtain was a frantic, organized chaos. This area, known as the gorilla position, is the nerve center of the show. Usually, it is a place of shouting orders and time cues. But in this moment, even the producers stopped. They took off their headsets, not because the show was over, but because they needed to witness the moment with their own ears. Standing in the shadows was the current champion. The animation shows a figure leaning against a travel crate, watching the monitor with a complex body language. There is no dialogue, but the posture speaks volumes. This return wasn't just a happy moment for the fans. It was a threat to the ecosystem. For every hero that returns, another star's spotlight gets a little dimmer. The champion watched the crowd reaction, a reaction they had never received, and realized the landscape had shifted beneath their feet in a matter of seconds. Production assistants scrambled to clear the hallway. The timing had to be perfect. The script for the next few weeks was being mentally shredded and rewritten by the creative team in real time. You could see the panic and the excitement in their gestures. This wasn't planned to be this big. They expected a pop, a cheer. They didn't expect a cultural event. The writers looked at each other, realizing that whatever plans they had for the next month were now irrelevant. The story wasn't theirs anymore. The crowd had hijacked it. The returning star had just become the sun, and everyone else was suddenly just a planet forced to orbit around her gravity. The walk back through the curtain is the most lonely walk in sports. 1 second, you are a god, bathed in light, worshipped by thousands. The next, you step through a piece of black fabric, and you are just a human being again, in a dim, concrete hallway. She burst through the curtain, the noise of the arena instantly muffled as the heavy drapes swung shut behind her. The adrenaline that had powered her march to the ring suddenly evaporated, leaving her trembling. She leaned against the cold concrete wall and slid down until she was sitting on the floor. The animation captures the isolation of this moment. Stick figures of producers and friends approached her, patting her on the back, offering water, but she looked through them. Her ears were ringing a high-pitched whine that wouldn't go away. She looked at her hands, and they were shaking uncontrollably. This is the side of the return that the cameras never show, the immense pressure of expectation. For months, she had sat at home wondering if they would remember her, wondering if she still mattered. Now, she had her answer, and the weight of it was crushing. The high of the return is terrifying because now the real work begins. She wasn't just a memory anymore. She was an active competitor. The armor of nostalgia had fallen off, and she was exposed. As she sat there, catching her breath, the realization hit her. She had to go out there and do it again next week, and in the week after that. The roar was a gift, but it was also a debt. And now, she owed them everything. By the time she had caught her breath backstage, the digital world had already caught fire. In the modern era, a wrestling return doesn't just happen in the arena. It happens simultaneously on millions of screens across the globe. The clip of her music hitting was trending #1 worldwide within 4 minutes. The animation shows the ripple effect. A student in a library in Tokyo watches the clip, covering their mouth to stop from screaming. A commuter on a train in London refreshes the feed, eyes wide. The grainy, shaking footage from fans in the front row spread faster than the official broadcast. These shaky videos captured something the polished TV cameras missed: the raw, unedited hysteria of the environment. Couldn't see the action clearly, but you could feel the shaking of the camera lens. Analysts and podcasters immediately went live, scrapping their planned content to discuss what this meant. The narrative was spinning out of control. Was this a one-time appearance? Was she here for the title? Who would she face? The speculation was a wildfire. For the wrestling promotion, this was the golden ticket. Merchandise sales spiked vertically on the graph. Tickets for the next show, hundreds of miles away, sold out in minutes. But for the woman at the center of it, the digital noise was just white noise. The internet creates a version of you that isn't real, a superhero without flaws. As she checked her phone, seeing millions of mentions, she didn't feel like a conqueror. She felt like an imposter staring at a legend she wasn't sure she could inhabit anymore. The most important conversation of the night didn't happen on a microphone. It happened in the quiet corner of the locker room, on a video call. She dialed home. On the screen, the house was dark and quiet, a stark contrast to the madness she was currently sitting in. Her partner answered, holding the phone up to show their sleeping child. The child didn't know that Mommy had just broken a decibel record. The child just knew Mommy wasn't there to read a bedtime story. This is the hidden cost of the return. The fans see the glory. They don't see the empty seat at the dinner table. She whispered into the phone, adrenaline still making her voice tremble. She asked if it looked okay on TV. She needed validation, not from the millions, but from the one person who knew her as a person, not a character. Her partner smiled and whispered back, "You looked like a superhero." She touched the screen, a longing in the gesture. The duality of her existence was tearing her apart. To be the queen in the ring, she had to be an absentee mother at home. The roar of the crowd is addictive, but it is cold comfort when you are alone in a hotel room 3 hours later. This section emphasizes the sacrifice. The return wasn't just a career move. It was a trade. She traded moments of her real life for moments of immortality. As she hung up the phone, the silence of the locker room felt heavier than before. The return is easy. The return is just walking. The week after the return is where the legend is tested. Now she had to speak. She stood in the center of the ring, the microphone heavy in her hand. The music died down, and she was left with the silence of anticipation. They wanted to know why. Why did she leave? Why did she come back? The animation zooms in on her face. The minimalist style captures the hesitation. She lifted the mic, then lowered it. She took a breath. This wasn't a script. She began to speak about the darkness. She spoke about the injury that almost ended it all, the doctors who said never again, and the quiet mornings where she couldn't get out of bed without pain. She stripped away the character. For 5 minutes, she wasn't the empress or the boss. She was a survivor. She admitted to the fear. She told the crowd that standing there right now was the scariest thing she had ever done because she was terrified she couldn't live up to their memory of her. This vulnerability created a different kind of connection. The fans didn't cheer. They listened. It was a respectful silence. They realized that their hero was breakable. This deepened the emotional bond. They weren't just rooting for a wrestler to win a match. They were rooting for a human being to overcome her own biology. God. The promo ended not with a catchphrase, but with a promise. I don't know how long I have left, but I will give you everything I have until the wheels fall off. The camera cuts away from the bright lights to the grinding reality of preparation. To maintain the illusion of being a superhero, she had to endure the reality of a body that was breaking down. The animation shows the ritual of the veteran wrestler. It takes her an hour just to get ready to train. We see her taping her knees, layer after layer of athletic tape, acting as a synthetic ligament. We see the ice baths, her figure shivering in the water, teeth gritted. We see the late-night sessions with the physical therapist grimacing as scar tissue is massaged out of a shoulder. Every bump she takes in the ring is a deposit of trauma that her body keeps the score of. The doubt is a constant companion. During a sparring session, she hesitates. A move that used to be automatic now requires conscious thought. She is a half-step slower. In her mind, she sees the comments online. She looks rusty. She's lost a step. These thoughts are poison. She pushes harder, lifting heavier, running faster, trying to outrun time itself. This section highlights the fragility of the comeback. One bad landing, one awkward twist, and the story ends for good. She isn't fighting an opponent. She is fighting her own expiration date. The fans see the high-flying moves. They don't see the waking up at 4 a.m. in pain so intense it brings tears to her eyes. 8, she continues. Not for the money, but because the ring is the only place the pain makes sense. The inevitable moment arrived. The past met the future. The returning legend stood in the center of the ring, and the music of the current champion hit. The young wolf came down to meet the old lion. The animation emphasizes the contrast. The legend stands still, stoic, scarred. The young champion is bouncing, arrogant, full of kinetic energy. They stood nose tunes. The crowd buzzed with a low-frequency hum, the sound of a big fight feel. No punches were thrown. They just stared. This is the art of wrestling, telling a story without moving a muscle. The young champion smirked, holding up the title belt, a shiny piece of gold that symbolized relevance. The legend looked at the belt, then looked at the champion's eyes. The dialogue was unspoken, but clear. The champion was thinking, your time is over. Go home. The legend was thinking, I built the house you were living in. The tension was palpable. The fans were torn. They loved the new star, but they worshipped the old one. It was a civil war of emotions. The legend reached out and touched the belt. A gentle tap. It was patronizing. It was a warning. The young champion flinched. In that micro-interaction, the hierarchy was established. The legend didn't need the belt to be the star. The belt needed the legend to be valuable. Segment ended with the legend simply walking away, leaving the champion alone in the ring, looking confused. The psychological warfare had begun, and the veteran had won the first battle without breaking a sweat. The video ends not with a match, but with a quiet realization. She stood by the hotel window, looking out at the city she had just conquered. The noise was gone. The adrenaline had faded. She was just a woman in a bathrobe in a strange city. Here is the twist. Everyone thought she came back for the fans. They thought she came back for the money or for one last title run. But as she stared at her reflection, the truth surfaced. She didn't come back for them. She came back because she didn't know who she was without the noise. The silence of normal life was terrifying to her. Being a mother, a wife, a civilian, that was hard. Being a wrestling god, that was easy. The ring wasn't a job. It was a hiding place. A place where the rules were simple and the adoration was guaranteed. The tragedy of the return wasn't that she might get hurt. It was that she was addicted to the chaos. She touched the cool glass of the window. The roar of the crowd was a drug, and she had relapsed. The world saw a hero returning to save the day. But in the quiet of that room, the story was different. It was a prisoner returning to her cell because she no longer knew how to be free. The screen fades to black with the faint, echoing sound of the crowd chanting her name, sounding less like a cheer and more like a haunting siren song.